Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. One of the things that I want to talk about in this video is speculation. To some degree or another, speculation is just part of the hobby, and that may change in the future, but as of right now, it's part of the hobby. Now, with that said, I think a lot of us could probably agree that we enjoy getting something inexpensively and watching the value of that thing increase over time. And potentially, we don't sell the book. It's still a good thing because you bought it inexpensively and now its value has increased. Or if you're speculating, you have that item inexpensively, you are able to sell it and you're able to make a profit. That's a good thing. But what happens if spec goes wrong? What happens if the book or the books that you've purchased actually do not increase in value? The thing that you were hoping to have happen doesn't, or maybe the actor gets himself or herself into trouble and the movie that you were betting on never actually sees the light of day. What do you do when spec goes wrong? That is what we're going to talk about in this video. But before I get to the video, I want to ask you to do a small favor for me. To help me to grow this channel, I want to ask you to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already done so. With that said, let's get to the video. What happens when spec goes wrong? That is the question of the day, and I am going to attempt to kind of talk about that over the course of this video. But a lot of people that are betting on speculation are essentially taking some risk. There is a spectrum of risk out there, from calculated risk to just a true gamble. But the reality is that you're not always going to guess correctly, and there are going to be some instances where you're going to speculate and it's going to go wrong. And I will tell you that what a lot of people will do is that they will actually hold on to that comic or those comics, hoping that things will turn around, hoping that market conditions will change. They will hold it versus actually selling that asset or that comic and taking the loss right now. And that potentially is a mistake. Trust me when I tell you that I have had my own fair share of speculation mistakes. I've gambled a few times and done a few things that have not worked out in my favor in any way, shape, or form. But instead of looking at some of my silly mistakes, I thought that I would look at a more timely example of maybe where some people are right now. There are a lot of people that were betting pretty heavily on the Morbius movie that came out from Sony. And we could probably agree that that movie has not been as well received as people had hoped. Certainly not the way that the studio had hoped that people would receive it. But because of this, a lot of people were going out buying Amazing Spider-Man issue number 101, the first appearance of Morbius. But I want to take a moment to look at essentially how that comic is performing right now using some data from Go Collect. So what I want to do is to look specifically at 3 grades of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 101. And part of the reason why I want to do this is that these are the most abundant grades on the CGC census. So the data is pretty robust for these. The very first grade that I want to look at is a 9.2, and at present there are 185 graded copies. A year ago, this book had an average price of $3,306. Its 90-day average has come down to around $2,900, and the 30-day average is $2,180. When you look specifically at a 9.0, there are 277 copies of this book on the census. Its 1-year average is $2,518. The 90-day average for this book is actually increased to $2,911, and its 30-day average has actually dropped to around $2,738. When we look at an 8.5, there are 360 copies of this book on the census. The 1-year average for this book is $2,014. Its 90-day average is $2,043, and its 30-day average is $1,988. When we look at these grades, essentially what we are seeing by and large is a downward trend from the 1 year to the 90 to the 30-day. Now, there is a little bit of a data lag, and that data lag may not truly reflect what we are seeing in terms of the performance of the Morbius movie. Because again, you see how things are performing when it comes to comics, when people sell, and potentially people have not yet begun to sell, and or the pricing services have not yet updated. But you can see that there is a downward trend. And based upon how this movie has been received, it is likely that we're going to continue to see this downward trend. Now, I will tell you that oftentimes we see a peak as a trailer comes out and a movie is released, and then a decline. That's a natural type of thing, but this decline could be more pronounced for ASM 101, again, because of how the movie performed, and time will tell. Now, the reality is that potentially the best thing that people could do if they bought this book is to sell this book. Sell it and take whatever they can get for it in order to take those funds and put them elsewhere. Now, this advice is really geared to those that may have bought this comic for the purpose of speculation, not necessarily someone that bought this book for the purpose of having it in the personal collection. So there's definitely a difference there. The reality is that the money that you have already spent on that comic or those comics is essentially a sunk cost. Those funds are gone. There is no way to get those funds back. But what you can do is sell those comics and recover whatever money you potentially can to essentially stop the bleed, because it could be months to years before things turn around. And again, if you think about what you could have done with those funds, you're losing out again on the other side. So the best thing that you can do from an investment standpoint might be to actually sell, take the loss, and move on with making other investments. Another important thing to do in these types of situations is to do a postmortem. And this is essentially where you take a step back and you evaluate what was done. You try to identify what decisions were made and whether those were the right decisions or the wrong decisions. In essence, you're trying to learn from your mistakes. And the truth of the matter is that you can oftentimes learn more from the mistakes that you make versus the successes that you have. Now, the challenge is that if you don't take the time to analyze what went right and what went wrong, then you're potentially going to put yourself in a position where you are making the next decision and it's doubling down on maybe a bad decision that you made previously. And so you want to take that time to step back and figure out what happened so that you can learn from the mistakes, so that you can make better decisions in the future. And again, this is no guarantee that you're going to be 100% correct, but you at least want to point yourself in the right direction. Give yourself a chance to make better decisions in the future. With that said, I'm going to wrap this video up, and my hope is that there's something that I've said in this video that will prove to be helpful for folks out there. The reality of the situation is that if you are going to speculate on comics, you're not always going to get it right. So the question becomes, what do you do when you get it wrong? Potentially the best thing that you could do is to sell that comic as quickly as you can, take whatever money you can get, and then move on to the next opportunity. And again, this is just a suggestion, a thing for you to think about and to consider. With that said, if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.